Chapter 3. The boy glances out over the countryside. Something is different about the landscape. Although the same flat expanse, dotted with bushes that reach between his knees and his waist, stretches out before him, there is something odd about what he sees now than he did several weeks ago. When this journey with Viola began, everything was either ochre or greyish-brown. The ground is off colour, he thinks to himself. He notes the plants have bright green veins popping out of their leaves. A shiver crawls down his spine. "Did I tell you to stop?" Viola's sharp voice cuts into his thoughts. "No, master, apologies. Start from the beginning. Don't get distracted, boy." He nods and recounts a tale Viola had been teaching him. Every evening she recites a short story or a segment of a longer one to him, and over the course of every day he is expected to repeat it, bearing with her never-ending corrections until he can reproduce it flawlessly. On this afternoon he recounts The Sewing Princess. Most of the tales capture his attention, but this one doesn't, and he struggles to bring it to life the way Viola does. At length she exclaims, "Of all the confounded fools! What was I thinking when I agreed to teach you?" She is irritable and he feels responsible. "I'm sorry, master, I just don't get this one. It makes no sense. What is it about?" "What do you mean? What does that have to do with your ability to recount?" "When I don't understand something, I can't get behind it, and you can hear I'm not into this one. Maybe another will be better." "Oh, so you're ready to give up?" He frowns. "No, it might just be easier with a different tale." "Did you choose to become a storyteller because you think it's easy?" Her voice is deadly. "No, I didn't mean it like that." He pauses, assessing the intensity of her displeasure, and then adds, "I'm sorry, master. I'll keep trying until I get it right." Her only reply is a grunt. He continues with a soft, "Thank you, master," in the hope of appeasing her. A short while later, they come to a cluster of shacks sprinkled between the road and a pond. A few children sit in the shade offered by overhanging roofs. They make no sound. The boy wonders what ails them. They are listless and their eyes are hollow. Viola stops at the first building and speaks to the only adult in sight, a wizened old man with but a few teeth. His weather-beaten visage reveals the harshness of the life he's lived. "Good afternoon," Viola begins, bowing her head. "We seek shelter from the midday heat. Would your village be able to offer us any?" The man turns his head and the boy sees milk-white eyes staring out into nothingness. "There's nothing but ruin and death here," the man rasps. "All those who can have left. Go while you're still able. There is nothing but oblivion here." Ice stabs through the boy's veins and a multitude of shivers convulse him. Uneasiness settles in the pit of his stomach and he begins to back away. Is this where dreams come to die? Viola strides behind him, unaffected by the situation. He glances up at her, but her face is unreadable. When the village lies some way behind, he ventures, "What of the children?" Viola's jaw twitches. Then she murmurs, "Their death sentence was signed when the others left the village. They were probably abandoned because they had the sickness. Being struck by blight is a certain death sentence." He shudders. After close to another hour of trudging, they see one lone tree off the road. Taking shelter under the sparse shade, the boy begins once more with his tale, but he falters after less than a minute. He glances back the way they travelled. The cluster of houses is well out of sight, but his mind continues to drag the image of that place of doom before his eyes. It swims into view now over the shimmering panorama. Then he stands, conviction coursing through him. We have to go back. They can't just be left to die out there. Viola pulls him into a tight embrace. She holds him until tears well up, spilling from him in a silent howl. "The blight has taken them," she murmurs. "There is nothing to be done, and all you'll get for going back is catching it too." When the flow of his sobs ebbs, she adds, "It is admirable that you care so much. Please hold on to that. It is rare in this empire. Do not let the horrors you encounter diminish your humanity. He nods, not trusting his voice. Gazing out over the bushes, with hints of luminescence on their leaves, he observes the corrupting purple that blankets the earth around them. What is wrong with this place? He sees one of Viola's eyebrows curve into her forehead. You mean you've never encountered the blight before? When he shakes his head, she says, This planet is overrun with it. There are few places that aren't affected. Anyone living a long time in a blight-stricken region will succumb to illness. The area we're in shows signs of but a little blight. How don't you know this? The question pulls his mind into a memory filled with gentleness. He remembers how his family used to work. His mother and father holding hands, beside them his sister, her charcoal hair gleaming in the sun as she wove her hands through the air. Their voices raised in song, they moved up the hillside bordering the farmstead. Other members of the clan dotted the entire valley, walking and motioning with their fingers, singing about purity and wholesomeness. They were cleaning the air and purifying the earth. The realization comes as a surprise. I always knew it was important, but the purpose was never clear. His thoughts return to the offish purple in the sand and to Viola's question. He gathers himself before replying. My family dedicated their time to cleaning it. I didn't understand, but now I realize that is what they were doing, and that's why we moved so often, going from one place to another. It was to purify the natural world. How? The blight is untreatable. The boy bites his lip. Can't say too much. That could be dangerous. I don't know. I wasn't able to do it, he says. He sees curiosity spark in Viola's eyes, but he shakes his head, looking at her meaningfully. I was never like them. I can't do what they can. Viola frowns, but before she can say anything, they hear a rustle in the bush a short distance away. They both look up. A thin creature, the same shade as the sand, sits on its haunches, front paws lifted up to its chest. Its pointy face looks straight at them with luminescent eyes. Then it raises its pitch-black snout and lets out a chattering call. A pause follows in which the animal turns its attention back onto the boy and Viola. He feels a shiver run up his spine when he notices the eyes. They are bright yellow and they glow. His ears pick up the sound of answering chattering coming from all over the scrub, and he feels the hairs on the backs of his arms rise. Within moments, they are surrounded by more of the 15-inch creatures. There are a dozen of them, all rushing up to the distance of a few yards and then sitting back on their haunches, waiting and watching. With a shudder, he sees their ears, tails, and paws of violent shades of purple. The boy's attention is drawn to Viola, who is rummaging in her pack. Her face is frantic, which redoubles his sense of foreboding. He glances back at the creatures. Some of them are drooling, others foaming at the mouth. Their stance is menacing, and their sandy brown coats are tattered, tufts missing in places as though they are wont to fight. His voice trembles in an unbidden thought. Are we food? Viola pulls out a 4-inch bamboo stick and meets his gaze, her expression grim. Yes. She starts twisting at the stick, pulling a section out and lengthening it to 4 times the size. As she does so, she explains. Blight-struck meerkats like the taste of meat. In a few moments, we'll have a mob in the regions of 100 descending upon us, lusting after our flesh. They will rip and tear at our bodies until we succumb of blood loss, and then they'll feast on us until nothing but white bones remain. The grim matter-of-fact way she says it gives the boy the creeps. She's seen someone go that way. Another shudder tears through him. Viola swings the now waist-high stick about her in a practiced flurry. Her expression is fierce. Then she slips her quartz crystal from her pocket and fastens it to one end of her staff. The boy watches the stone glow and wonders what help it might be, but he finds the gleam in her eyes somewhat reassuring. A violent screech goes up, sending chills knifing into the boy's already petrified intestines. He is paralyzed as he watches wave upon wave of the creatures scurrying towards the tree where he stands beside Viola. He loses his balance when she shoves him towards a tree trunk and he tumbles against the sturdy column, bark scraping his cheek. "Stay there," she orders. "Don't get in my way." Then she whirls her staff in an arc around her, creating a glowing crescent of shimmering light around her. The first meerkat launches itself into the air, a wild shriek coming from its foam-flecked jaws. Its dayglow eyes are fixed on Viola. The boy watches, heart pounding in his throat, as Viola lifts her stick and catches the animal across the abdomen. It hurtles to the ground and lands with a soft thump next to the boy's boot. A cry strangles his throat. He can't tear his eyes from the limp form in front of him. The mad luminescence has disappeared from the creature's eyes, which are a glazed black now. His brain focuses on details, the unnatural angle at which the creature's hind leg lies twisted, the total stillness of this broken body lying on the ground, the pink tinge creeping into the saliva and staining small teeth. Faced with the death of this tiny animal, a knife twists in the boy's heart. His mind runs a course of thoughts, sharp and focused, but also detached from all else going on around him. He hears the stern voice of his father. The sanctity of life is something precious that should be guarded. Yet here he is, a boy, 13, faced with kill or be killed. Panic fills him. He knows this shattered corpse at his feet is wrong. It goes against everything he knows and believes in. Viola's staff whirls into his vision, and he is drawn back to the intensity of the moment. He watches her tool of death curve, hitting several creatures, and then, as another 10 or more of them meerkats leap at her, the crystal at the top of the staff pulsates, sending out a rush of power, hurling all of them into the scrub. Smashed bodies litter the ground around them, and the boy feels his breath crush him. He sinks to his knees. The horror of the moment pulls him down into a world of nightmare. It's not supposed to be this way. Inside him, something snaps. It is a jarring, irreversible breaking. His eyes fly open. Viola is barely able to keep the mob of crazed animals at bay. She is sweating, and in a flash, he sees desperation in her eyes. She mutters something and raises the staff, leaving herself open to the first row of creatures who seize their moment and bite into her exposed legs. He watches as the staff begins a downward motion. In that instant, the boy knows she will release a spell so powerful it will blast all the meerkats surrounding them into obliteration. His mind screams, "Care for all living things." "Stop!" he bellows. He is on his feet from the impact of his outburst, his breaths coming in rapid succession, rasp in his ears. Stillness meets his gaze. Everything is frozen. Viola stands, her staff a hand's breadth above the ground. Her short hair is plastered to her face. One meerkat hovers in mid-leap, another is frozen with its teeth at the point of ripping through Viola's trousers. There is absolute silence. The sea of furry creatures has closed in on them, a rising wave stopped right at the crest before it breaks to come crashing onto the beach. Not even a breeze rustles through the area. Only the blazing discs of the two suns witness the boy's feet. He takes a deep breath, steps between the frozen mass of creatures and removes the staff from Viola's fingers. He lays a hand on her shoulder and she comes back into motion. Her arm moves with her decisive downward motion, the intention of a moment before, thwarted by some unknown power. She stops and looks up at the scene of stillness about her. "What the?" she exclaims, confusion sending turmoil through her eyes. Her gaze falls on the boy and he lowers his head. "I needed it to stop." "What?" Her voice dies. He wonders whether she wanted to say, "What needed to stop?" or "What did you do?" "I needed the killing to stop," he says, stepping through the wave of creatures and putting distance between himself and the limp forms littering the ground. "Well, if I'd known you could do this, I wouldn't have needed to kill anything. It's not like I wanted to. I didn't know I could do this. I don't even know if it was me who did this," he says, gesturing at the frozen creatures. He turns around, away from the carnage. His intestines are thawing, but he still doesn't feel like himself. His heart flutters and he feels faint. Crouching down and looking out over the land where these creatures live, flat expanse stretching out into the distance, he thinks, it is their home. We are passers-by and we didn't respect them as we should. Please, Mother Father, forgive this transgression. He bows his head. Why aren't you happy? Viola asks, her voice uncomprehending and glacial. How can you be happy with so much death? He can't keep the anguish from his voice. Now he's staring her in the eye. We committed sacrilege against the great parent. Care for all living things. That is the teaching I was raised on. I can't rejoice in this loss. I must show I learned my lesson. I won't let something like this happen again. Not for my sake. His tirade fades at the look in her eyes. Her face is a blank mask. He falters, then adds, as an afterthought, this is what I know is right. I must do what I can to avert the catastrophe that will come with such wilful neglect of the commandments. Viola extricates herself from the mob of meerkats trapped in time. She has a hard time getting her trouser leg free from the jaws of that one overzealous creature. Once liberated, she sets off towards the road and calls over her shoulder, Please don't mind me. I have no qualms about living today. The boy lifts his face heavenwards and once more whispers, Thank you for your guidance and protection. Thank you for your gift of power that saved so much life today. Please give these creatures the gift of your blessing and healing. He rises to his feet. His eyes cast over the wave of creatures frozen in their attack. He brushes a fingertip over the nearest purple tail. It is his gesture of remorse. Then he turns and joins Viola on the road. A ripple passes through a mob of sandy creatures. A whisker twitches, wide staring eyes blink, and feral snarls relax. Soft chatter erupts as the animals come to. The red and yellow sun's warm rays melt away unnatural hues, leaving behind sleek beige fur and inquisitive black eyes. Sooty noses twitch this way and that as the mob of meerkats disperse, slinking into the semi-desert of their home in search of grubs and insects. I'd like to thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed that. If you'd like to know what happens next in the Apprentice Storyteller, you're welcome to use the link and to check out my Wattpad page where 7 chapters are available for free. Thank you very much and have a great day.